Okay, so January 7th, 2026, powerful day. We have Venus making a conjunction to Mars and the Sun. At the same time, all of those planets will be on their way to forming an opposition to Jupiter. This is in the axis of Capricorn and Cancer, which has everything to do with our purpose here on Earth, which is Capricorn, and our emotional regulation, which is Cancer, the emotional wellness at home, which allows us to really be in our work that much more fully. Okay. January 7th is a big day when it comes to specifically relationships, because that is what is symbolized in the relationship between Venus and Mars. Any two planets in astrology have a relationship together that gesture towards, or rather directly reflect, the dynamic of some nature or pattern that exists between these two planets. Now, when you synthesize Venus and Mars, you essentially get relationships. These are often considered the lovers, but ultimately it's about balance. It's about inner duality. Venus being where we are open to life. Basically, I see Venus as the portal through which we can reach out and other people can reach in, right? It's that portal. It's very, very specific to each of us based on the sign and the aspects that Venus was making when you were born, the sign that she was in. And, from there, the transits chug along and we get to points in time like we are January 7th, where Venus and Mars make a conjunction to each other, restarting a cycle, which actually means that they're finishing one cycle and starting another cycle, right? The cycle that they're finishing first started in February of 2024. So if you think back to what was happening in the most significant relationships in your life in February of 2024, and actually February 22nd of 2024, I want you to go into your phones, go into your messages, anything significant that happened in February of 2024, specifically February 2nd of 2024, 22nd. And I'm making a big deal out of this because last conjunction, the last time Venus and Mars made their conjunction to each other at this date, February 22nd, 2024, they also made a conjunction to Pluto. Pluto in the sign of Aquarius at that time, which is our most obsessive and challenging, and yet also our most powerful point of focus. It can feel as though this is maybe the starting point of where we began to lose control of our own minds. And I don't say that lightly, okay? I recently made a video about why Pluto in Aquarius is essentially a transit that reflects that we are watching our own minds kind of self-destruct and then be reborn while Pluto is in the sign of Aquarius. I also correlate this to the logic of astrology itself being kind of reborn, the algorithm of the stars and whatnot, but that's a little bit of a different topic. I'm not going to go so much into right now. However, I will say that you are not bound by what I'm saying here. You have the agency to make whatever change you want in really any moment, okay? You are what give the stars their meaning, not the other way around, okay? I know you can argue it the other way around. I know that all the ways work. This is the way I'm approaching it, okay? And this somewhat, self-centered positioning, I think, is going to be the lesson that we are all learning while Saturn moves into Aries, co-present with Neptune in Aries by, again, the end of January of 2026. So basically what I'm saying is that the cycle that we have just finished with Venus and Mars that started in 2024, February 22nd of 2024, is directly intertwined with Pluto. So the point of that is that there's likely a relationship that died over the last almost 2 years, since February of 2024. And that might be a relationship that you've been obsessing over. It might be a specific person who allowed you to have access to a type of group of people. This could work the other way around. Maybe you met someone around that time that opened up your eyes to a whole new different community, okay? Maybe you're still in the throes of that relationship, still expanding, still beginning, you know what I mean? It really, when it comes to Pluto's influence, depends on how Pluto is aspecting your own natal chart to really determine how much of an impact, either positively or negatively, Pluto's profound influence will have on your life, because Pluto will undoubtedly have a profound influence in your life. I know for myself, I have been nearing Pluto exactly squaring my natal moon, which is at 3 degrees of Taurus. And at that point last year, Pluto wasn't close enough to my moon yet, probably only around 1 degrees of Aquarius. My moon is around 3 or around 350, like 3 to 4 degrees of Taurus. And so that exact square wasn't exact, but it continued to get tighter and tighter over these last 2 years. And the pressure was enormous for me. I did have quite a big relationship end, and it's been really significant for me. Only in the way that it has taught me so profoundly how I use my own mind, okay? And that is Pluto in Aquarius. This is how you're using your own mind. I'm belaboring this because the last Venus-Mars cycle, which is our most intimate cycle, it's our most intimate, how we relate to ourselves, and of course, how we relate to other people, significant partners, whether that's business relationships or romantic or anything in between. It's these places where we see ourselves reflected in someone else and allow that to shape our reality in every moment. That was seeded with Pluto in this last cycle, which has been magnanimous, has been totally revolutionary, okay, when it comes to how relationships are changing our lives, okay? So again, keep into consideration what's going on in your chart, what's going on in the early fixed signs in your chart to see what Pluto is really doing, okay? But, okay, I have some really interesting news, which is that last cycle, Venus and Mars each made a conjunction to Pluto before they conjuncted each other, which means that at the end of the last cycle, they went into the underworld. And then they each came out, and then they made a new relationship to each other, which to me says that, you know, they already knew the relationship was over. They already knew they had met their death, and yet they needed one more meeting. They needed one more cycle over these last 2 years to really establish that, affirm that, okay? Whereas what's happening this time, Venus and Mars and the Sun meet with each other at 18 degrees of Capricorn, I'm pretty sure. And it's later in the month of January that each of these planets will successively conjunct Pluto. So what happens is Venus and Mars make a new relationship with each other January 7th. And then it's not quite until, and let me get the exact date here, not quite until January 19th, basically between the 19th and the 27th, Venus, Moon, Mars, and the Sun will all make an exact conjunction to Pluto, each dipping into the underworld, okay? But keep in mind, Venus and Mars have already reestablished their relationship to each other by this point. So, are you tracking here? So, they make this new relationship to each other, and then they go into the underworld. And then they play out the rest of their transit, okay? Which is going to take all the way until November 24th of 2027. So there's a lot still to come with this Venus-Mars transit, but like everything in astrology, we must take into consideration the seed point, the seed chart. And in this case, this is the conjunction between Venus and Mars at 18 degrees of Capricorn on January 7th of 2026, okay? And I see it as something really powerful that this conjunction is happening in Capricorn. Last time it was in Aquarius, much more about this obsessive mind problem we were having in a relationship. And now in Capricorn, this is so much more about our stability, about our future, about the stability of our future, rather, when it comes to our relationship with ourselves, our relationship with business partners, but also our relationship with partners, like actual romance, if you will. So there's, I really like it. Okay. I really like this conjunction happening in Capricorn for more material stability than we've had in the last cycle that started in February of 2024. So that's what I wanted to get across. Very likely we'll make some more videos about this as time chugs along, but that's what I have. Let me know what you're looking forward to. Let me know how this last Venus-Mars cycle went for you since February 22nd of 2024. And until the next one, bye for now.